Hello, everybody. It's Jake Senzano, host of Jake and Gino podcast here with my co-host, the multifamily mentor, the coach, the chef, the father six, the best-selling author, the G-Daddy. Gino Barbo. Gino, how's it going?
Jake, I am all recharged today. I went to a Dr. Gary Chapman event last night. Got a little love with the wife, a little hand holding, the 5 love languages. I, practiced a little bit each of those last night. And the irony is that it's just this guest just fits in perfectly.
Apparently, Gino's love language is touch, but we won't go there. So we got a very special guest today. Today, we are joined by a world-renowned relationship expert with over 25 years of experience helping thousands of couples, including anyone from war veterans to sports stars to Hollywood producers, featuring the BBC, Financial Times. And he's got a 3 million viewer TEDx Talk. That's incredible. So he's got a unique approach. We're excited. Bruce Muzik, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm super stoked to be here.
So we're gonna weave a little bit here, and by the end of the show, I'm gonna ask you if there's any salvaging Gino and myself here. So we want to know if we can get through this relationship or it's just throwing the towel. But we'd love to hear about you, how you got into this, and what makes you so special, Bruce.
So, 2006, my world kind of falls apart. My marriage falls apart. I'm living in London, and my wife and I get divorced, and I'm kind of sitting in the rubble of my divorce thinking to myself, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? All my plans that I had for my future had kind of disappeared. And so I call up a friend of mine, Eric Edmeades. You guys have interviewed him already. And he lives in the Turks and Caicos. And I'm like, dude, I need to get out of London. What's it going to take to come and move to the Caribbean? And he says, a plane ticket, just come crash on my couch. I fly to the Caribbean and I proceed to have a midlife crisis. And in this kind of soul-searching time, I have this humbling realization that the common denominator in all of my failed relationships is me. And that realization, as humbling as it was also inspiring because I thought, well, if I'm the common denominator, then I can do something about it. And so that sparked a fire in me to basically learn as much as I could about how to make romantic relationships work. And I became obsessed with reading all of the science behind romantic relationships. Fast forward a couple of years, my company, Love at First Fight, is born. And today we've helped over 20,000 people last year alone turn their marriages around. And that's the short version. Basically came out of me needing to learn about relationships.
Okay, Gino, I'm jumping in. Well, no, I'm just going to ask a very obvious question for all the young bros out there on Instagram. It seems like the solution now is you got to be 6 foot tall and make 6 figures. Is that the solution to all this, Bruce?
I don't think so. I'm definitely not 6 foot tall. And I was always a nerdy geek when I was growing up my teenage years. I've now had laser surgery, but I had John Lennon glasses that were like this thick. And
they weren't working for you.
Attracting a great partner is down to the motorcycle you ride. But that's just my opinion.
Yeah, Bruce, I want to dive into the word me. You're diagnosing yourself as me. What do you think was wrong with me, or what were you doing that was, I don't want to say sabotaging these relationships, but really leaving you in the rubble, as you just mentioned?
Yeah. So when I say me, I mean, I was completely uneducated about what makes good relationships work. And most of us are. We don't get a relationships 101 class at school. So just like parenting, we go into parenting blind, we go into marriage blind without the tools. And so for me, one of the biggest insights that I had, and we can dig deeper into this later on, is that whenever I came to communication in my marriage, I would always be there when it fell flat. And what I wasn't doing was I wasn't connecting with my partner first before I tried to talk about whatever it was that we needed to talk about. And so there's this idea that's becoming very popular in relationship science now, that if you're emotionally connected first, your nervous system calms down. It feels safe with the person that you're with. And instead of seeing them as the enemy or a combatant or somebody who might hurt you, you begin to see them as a teammate. And you talk with them as you would talk with a teammate, lovingly, kindly, openly. But when you're at loggerheads, when you're disconnected, you don't feel safe around each other, then, even the most powerful communication tools just fall flat in their face. So, for example, if any of you watching this have ever been to couples therapy, have you guys ever been to couples therapy before? No?
I have not.
No.
Well, the couples therapy, according to some statistics, has the highest failure rate of any therapy known to man. 3 out of 4 couples that go to couples therapy end up divorced. And I think a big reason
What a
for
racket.
Yeah. I mean, and it's not because the therapists aren't well-intentioned. I think it's because they teach communication skills first. And one of the most common ones, if you've ever been to couples therapy, is the I feel communication skill. And it's meant to be used like this. Honey, when you don't take out the trash, I feel lonely and alone. Okay? Safe communication, easy peasy, no threats there. But when the two of you are disconnected and you're at loggerheads, you're fighting, it turns into, when you don't take out the trash, I feel like you're a jerk. And then suddenly your communication tool has become a weapon that better equips you to hurt each other instead of heal each other. And so one of the big insights I had when I was researching relationships was that if we get connected first, then we feel safe. Then we naturally communicate. And then one of the fun things I do when I speak in front of audiences, I'm like, how many of you here came here to get some communication tools? And most of the hands go up in the audience. I'm like, well, how many of you speak English? And there's like a nervous laughter. And I'm like, well, how many of you had any trouble communicating when you were falling in love? Nobody's hand goes up then. So I'm like, well, you speak English, you know how to communicate because you've done it before. It can't be communication that's the problem. It has to be something else. And so this idea that I'm on a mission to get out into the world is an idea that I've labeled connect first, communicate later. And like Gary Chapman, who's one of my heroes too, I love simplifying complex research. He's done an amazing job of that. And for me, that's the thing that's made the biggest difference for me. When I was the common denominator in all my failed relationships, I was not connecting. When I felt unsafe or scared or nervous or upset and angry, I'd just go in like a bull in a china shop and go, we need to talk. And then everything would implode and that would be the end of that. And after 5 years of that, the relationship had suffered so much damage, it just fell apart. So that's the long
Do you think
answer
you need to
your
gamble
short
a little bit with your ego? Because if you come in with low emotions and, don't take this as an insult, but the way you were describing or acting out your argument, you sounded exactly like my 6-year-old and 10-year-old, right?
Yeah.
And so like if you approach these situations and know that you may be hurt and you're okay with it and come in with a lower emotion and a rational mindset, that's got to be like a great starting point, no?
Good luck with that.
Yeah, I was just going to say, yeah.
What are you talking
Good
about?
luck with that.
I've had
And
a
I'll
lot
tell
of
you why.
experience doing that same exact thing in my own life. That's
Yeah.
No, perfectly
Yes.
in your own life. Absolutely. And we'll absolutely
I
get
have
there.
scientific data to back it up. I've done studies, double blind, placebo controlled,
I
so.
believe it. And here's the thing, Jake, where you're absolutely right. We are 6-year-olds when we get triggered. So something interesting happens when our emotional.
There's no resolution going to come out that when you start out the gates like that. You already sunk your ship.
Exactly. And here's why. You literally become stupid when you're triggered. So when we get emotionally triggered, when our partner says something that pushes our hot buttons and we get emotionally triggered, our brain starts to perceive our partner as a threat. We go automatically into fight or flight, and our amygdala, the reptilian part of our brain, goes, okay, if we're going to fight or if we're going to run, we need more oxygen. Where are we going to get that oxygen from? The most resource intense part of our body, our brain. So your brain literally redirects blood flow. Your body redirects blood flow from your brain to your arms or your legs, which means now your prefrontal cortex is starved of oxygen and you are literally 50 IQ points less intelligent. And this is why we say dumb stuff when we're triggered that we don't mean, that we haven't thought about, and we point fingers at our partner. But when you feel safely connected, that doesn't happen. So you retain all of your logical or cognitive functions, and you can actually have a calm conversation. So how do you go from being triggered in the heat of the moment to having a calm conversation?
You create a trust tree.
You reconnect. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting, both of you. You've just described the Democrats at all of these hearings right now because they completely get triggered. And the stupidest things that come out of their mouths, you're saying to yourself, are you actually saying that? Do you actually believe what you're saying? And I
Yeah.
think it's incredible. It's Stephen Covey talks about the stimulus and the response. And the time in between those two is what makes, I guess, humans different than most other species or animals on the planet. So if you can actually, like Jake said, as you become an adult, as you become more mature, that time between should get longer, and you should be able to react differently, or at least accept responsibility and take responsibility. But it's funny, Bruce, that you're saying this. Most of us don't even realize that. We just react without even thinking, and then we say we're triggered and we blame people. But there's one thing I wanted to.
Oh, Gino, can I jump in real quick, please?
Yeah, baby.
I need the
jump
answer to
in.
this.
Go ahead.
Hold
go
the
ahead.
thought, because I think we can solve the world's problems if Bruce can unpack these people going online and just screaming at the phone. You know, I've never seen something so uncontrolled and weird in my entire life. And I think if you can address that, the rest of society comes together. Like that's the root cause of the world's problems right now. Narcissistic people yelling into their phone, trying to get attention and think their life's going to get better from it. How do we stop that from happening? If we stop that, the world heals.
Okay, let's circle back to Gino just for 1 second. I'm going to come to you, Jake, but Gino said something interesting about extending the time between stimulus and response. And that's not that hard to do when you're not triggered. So I want to share an anecdote from Carl Jung, the famous psychologist who basically was the godfather of much of the psychology that we use today. And one of the things he writes about having done in his life was he went to the zoo. And he would regularly go to the snake pit, and there'd be all of these snakes hidden behind big, thick glass. And he would tap on the glass to provoke the cobras. And what he was trying to have happen was have the cobras strike at him at the glass. Obviously, the cobras could never reach him. And he knew that logically. And what he was trying to do was to see if when the cobra struck the glass, he could stop himself from jumping back like this in reaction. In his entire lifetime of doing this, he never once was able to stop his nervous system from jumping back when the cobra struck at the glass. So to some degree, our automatic reflex reactions are not within our control when we perceive a threat that is a threat to our life. Now, as far as our nervous system is concerned, our partner not supporting us is coded in our amygdala as a threat to our life. If you're a caveman or a cavewoman and your partner abandons you and you're a cavewoman, you're going to die because you've got a baby which means you can't gather food by yourself or hunt by yourself, because if you go off and leave your baby, an animal's going to eat your baby. If you take the baby with you and try and go hunting for food, the baby's going to scare the animals away. Either way, you, cavewoman, and cave baby, die if your partner leaves you. So we're literally coded in our brain wiring to perceive our partner's abandonment as a threat to our life. And that's why we react so crazily. Now, I'm not saying we can't learn to create that space between stimulus and response.
We get it.
We absolutely can if we heal some of our childhood wounding and some of the psychological challenges that we all grow up with. Nobody escapes it. And I think whether, either side of the political spectrum, all of us are human. We all get triggered from time to time.
We're all screwed up.
Jake, if you were to insult me and say something nasty to me right now, I'm not going to get triggered because I don't count on you for my survival. If my wife said something nasty to me right now, I have a much higher chance of getting triggered. So with you, stimulus and response.
I wouldn't say anything mean, Bruce.
Only to me.
So to your question, Jake, people going online and losing their shit, excuse my language, is often down to the fact that I think that there's just absolutely no repercussions. You're anonymous. You can go online. There's no repercussions to putting your opinion
they're
out.
They're videoing themselves, right? Doing it.
And you can't see the people that you're hurting or the people that you're offending. You don't see their reactions. You don't see the impact, and you don't see how you make other people feel. We're so separated that at some way, it's a way for us to just vent and get our opinion out there when somebody else's opinion threatens us and we perceive, stuck in our little world, that their opinion might be dangerous. at some level.
I'm fixated on these people screaming though. It's the weirdest thing
I know.
to me,
I
and
know.
I just that is like the one thing over the last 5 years. I'm like, this is so toxic. Like this has got to stop. People need to grow
Yeah.
up a little bit.
Yeah. So
Bruce, let me ask you about with Dr. Chapman last night. He was talking about the love tank. And I think what happens is when you are not serving your partner or you're not feeling their needs, that tank is really, really low. And can you talk about that a little bit? Because I think in your relationship, when you had your failed relationships, your tank was probably really low and her tank was low, and you didn't feed each other. There was no deposits into your love tank banks,
exactly.
and I think that's important. Can you discuss that and describe that a little bit?
Sure, Gino, that's a great topic. So I use the metaphor of a battery, like a cell phone battery, because we all use those every day. When your cell phone goes down to 15%, and I'm looking at mine because it's filming me right now, mine's at 82%, so I'm pretty relaxed. But if mine was sitting at like 15, 14, 13%, and I knew I had another 45 minutes of interview to go, I would start feeling anxious. I wouldn't be able to be completely present with you. I would be starting to go, thinking about, I need to get my battery charger, but I want to be on camera and talk. At some level, I would start to activate my anxiety, my fight or flight nervous system. The part of my nervous system that's responsible for survival, there would be a threat, and the threat is my battery. When our emotional batteries, our relational battery, our connection battery between us in our relationship is low, we start to walk on eggshells, and the smallest little things can set us off because we don't feel that sense of safety. So what can you do to recharge your battery? Well, Gary Chapman has a bunch of great ideas. I've got a bunch of ideas. But essentially, it boils down to ritualizing or habituating little daily activities that add 5-10% to your battery every day. And after a week or two of these daily activities, you're back at 80-90% battery again, and everything's hunky-dory. And we've all had these experiences with our partner when we go through weeks of these blissful times where there's no arguments, no disagreements, no snapping at each other. Everybody's kind of seems to be happy. And you're like, I'm the luckiest guy in the world, married to the most amazing woman in the world. And then one day you come under a lot of stress, a hot button gets triggered, and your battery kind of gets drained down to 50% because you snap at each other. By that evening, you haven't spoken and repaired, and now your battery's down to 40%. The next morning, you didn't cuddle the night before in bed. Now your battery's down at 20. And so when you're at breakfast, one little snap from your partner and a screaming match erupts. And so
Powder keg.
Yeah, powder keg. And it's because of the low battery or the low love tank. So the thing to do is to start to put daily habits in place. And I'll give you some simple ones that I teach my clients that are like so fun to do. So one of my favorites, the one my clients love the most, and they say has made the biggest difference in their relationship, is what I call an appreciation journal. And what you do is you buy a little book filled with blank pages, and you clip a pen to the outside of it, and you leave it on the toilet seat. And I'll tell you why the toilet seat is important in a moment. And every time you go to the toilet, you pick up the book, and you're going to open it and read what's in there. And assuming it's the first time you're writing in there, you write one thing that you appreciate about your partner in the book per day. That's it. Just one thing. Honey, I am so grateful that you play with the kids every night and read them stories. You're such a great dad. Boom, done. What's going to happen is dad's going to come to the bathroom. He's going to have to pick up the book in order to lift the toilet seat in order to pee. He reads that. His heart melts. He smiles. He's inspired to write one more thing about her. Honey, thank you so much for a beautiful dinner last night. You cook for me every night. Like, you're so thoughtful. Boom, done. Eventually, you're going to have 20, 30, 40, 50 pages of incredible things that have been written about you. And every time you go to the bathroom, you open the book and you have to find a blank page. So you have to page through 50 pages of the last year's worth of beautiful things you've written for each other. Even if you had a fight that morning, your connection battery goes up 25% just reading what you wrote over the last year. And it's such a beautiful thing to do, while you're having a number two on the toilet. You sit there and you page through these things. So here's how to make it work even better. Leave it on the toilet seat, because I've learned over time that if you leave it anywhere else, it will get forgotten about and you won't write in it. If it's on the toilet seat, you will write in it because you have to see it every day. Second thing, Don't use the pen as a bookmark, because that will prevent you from paging through to find the blank page. Hook the pen to the outside. Don't use a bookmark in the little book. That forces you to page through the many pages of beautiful things you've written about each other. And you should expect to see results from this from anywhere between 3 or 4 days to 2 weeks. Your connection battery should have doubled. It's a beautiful, simple thing you can do. And, it'll really help raise connection.
Bruce, if I'm listening to this right now and my relationship so I have a really good friend. His name is Philip McKernan. He does a lot of work with relationship with coaching couples, and he says that people wait a little too long. I mean, like a couple years. When should I be worried, or when should I say to myself, I need help in my relationship? What are some of the telltale signs?
I think the telltale sign is falling in love. I mean, we all need help in our relationships because none of us know jack shit about how to do relationship well unless you've spent a month or two reading 10 books by the top relationship researchers. We weren't taught at school. Some of us got lucky. And Jake, this maybe is you. You sound like you might have been lucky that you had great parents.
I have a story to tell, and I'll answer the question once you're done saying about this.
Perfect. If you got lucky and you had really securely attached parents who understood how to do conflict, maybe because they were taught by their parents or because they'd read some books, and they modeled that for you, then you might naturally and automatically respond to your partner's distress in a way that makes things better, not worse. But if you're like the majority of the population who are insecurely attached, and that's the term we can talk about later on if we want to, what's likely to have happened is that your parents knew as little as you do. But of course, we don't admit that. I mean, try telling a mom that she doesn't know jack shit about parenting. She'll punch you in the face, right? But the truth of the matter is, unless you spent your life studying the topic, you probably don't know enough about how to be a great parent or how to be a great partner. And you could do with, reading a couple of books together with your partner from the top relationship researchers, and then having conversations with each other about what you learned, what you want to adopt in your relationship, what you don't think is any good. And then starting at the beginning, like in the first couple of months of your relationship, so that by the time the drugs wear off, because when you're falling in love, you are literally high on oxytocin, on serotonin, and all these beautiful drugs. You're pretty much tripping balls on oxytocin. By the time the drugs wear off, which takes 6 months to 2 years, you enter phase 2 of your relationship, which is known as the power struggle stage. And if you don't have the tools going into the power struggle stage, it's going to be rough and your relationship may not make it, which is why a divorce rate for first marriages is 46%, for second marriages is 62%, and for third marriages is 73%, because we don't have the education and the tools. So my recommendation is, as soon as possible, go and get the tools. Don't wait until you need them, because by then it's too late. I mean, it's never too late, but by then you're going to be struggling.
It's interesting because with multifamily, the more deals you do, the better you get. I guess it's the complete opposite with the marriages. The more times you get married, the more you fail. So yeah. I guess there's no correlation. Try not to get married more than once, because the failure rates seem to be pretty high. Jake, I'm sorry.
No, it's good. No, I was just going to answer his question. And I think in any instance in my life, some of us are just naturally good. They call us like savants at certain things, and you just figure it out. But I think in most instances, it's acquired skill. And, there's a old NFL quarterback. His name was Steve Young. I don't know if you ever heard of him, Bruce. He's fantastic. Had like the highest quarterback rating at his time in the league. He was one of the first guys that could really run and pass, won a world championship. He's just phenomenal. And it took him till he was in the league until he understood to really flick the wrist and turn the thumb down to get more spiral on the ball that would create better accuracy and velocity. And I heard that when I was like 8 years old, and it always stuck with me. And when it came to relationships, specifically with my wife, I didn't know what the hell I was doing. We've been together for a long time, but the cool thing is that Gino and myself have always surrounded ourselves with people that want to get better, that they work on themselves. And so I'm a product of my environment and, hanging out with cool guys like Gino. But we were at an event together. I don't know, this is probably going back 6 years. And one of our partners, rest in peace, Rick Sapio, presented on something called the family placemat, I believe is his actual term for it. Is that correct, Gino? And that revolutionized our relationship and we sort of paired that with Gary Chapman's, teachings and whatnot. And essentially we meet every Sunday, my wife and I do, without fail. We present our weeks to one another, what contractor things are going on, where are we going out this week, what's the vacation, what are the kids doing, how's the homeschooling going, what's the fitness, are we making sure we're getting extra grapes because I'm a fruit fanatic, right? So all those things that are pitfalls, and I can wake up and be a snotty little bitch because I didn't get my grapes. It's all settled. And I try to, give, reciprocity to my wife in the same way. So I'm not, by any means sitting here saying, we have a perfect relationship, but I think approaching things in a calm manner and getting together once a week has had a profound impact on our quality of life. And hopefully it's trickled down to our children as well.
It will. Your children will copy what you do, and you teach them, and you're teaching them really well by the sounds of things. What I love about that is you have some predictable rituals. Like every Sunday, we sit down together, we collaborate as a team on what's happening in our world and our individual worlds too. And that builds a sense of trust and safety and also predictability. There's a beautiful quote that,
and cool productivity for our lives. Like we're doing more cool things because of it.
Yeah, I bet. And so I once read this beautiful quote. It goes, "Safety is not the absence of danger. Safety is the presence of predictability." And so when every Sunday, that predictable nature, or if every day you're writing in your appreciation journal on top of the toilet seat, anything that's predictable, that can be ritualized, at some sense calms your nervous system going, I think I can predict what's going to happen next. Because for the last
same thing with planning out your week. I spend at least an hour, sometimes two, planning out my week before I have the meeting with my wife. Some people say that's nuts. I would not do it any other way because of the results I've seen from it. And I will say this, your idea here about this gratitude journal, if you will, if for lack of a better term, has found its way into retail America. My wife shops at this place. I think it's called Altered State. And she goes in the back to try things on. And there's this like appreciation book with lines on it that people are, I think they're talking about their experience, in the store. So they stole that one from you, Bruce. You might have a lawsuit on your hands.
Me, but that's great. That's great.
Next time I'm in there, I'm going to write something in and pass it forward, pay it forward, whatever they say.
Bruce, before we go to the short answers, Jake was talking about that tool of, as far as journaling, as far as rhythms in a family, in a relationship. Do you have any other tools that you'd like to share with us?
Yeah, another rhythm, to use your term, that you can put into your relationship is touch. So we all need touch, whether you think you like touch or not. Babies who weren't touched regularly grow up into adults with smaller brains. They have a much higher chance of getting divorced. They academically have a 30
babies that are touched more or less. I'm sorry,
babies who are touched less have smaller brains. They earn 30 to 40% less income as adults, and they're much more likely to get divorced. And so we all need touch. Touch is a beautiful thing, especially, or should I say, even if you think that you're the kind of person who doesn't like touch, it's probably you just never got used to it and you weren't given much. And so ritualizing touch is another beautiful way to create connection and recharge that connection battery every single day. And so here's 2 times that you can do it really, just when you wake up in the morning, you go to bed, like give each other a hug, give each other a kiss, hello in the morning, give each other a kiss, good night, and a hug at night before you go to sleep. Just ritualizing touch in those 2 times can start to warm up the space between the two. Now, if you want another 2 times that are easy because you do them every day, and that is when you leave home for work and come home from work. Even if you work at home in a home office, before you start your work day, you go to your partner, you give him a hug, you say, bye, honey, see you later at lunch or whenever it is. And when you come home from work, hi, honey, I'm home. Now you got 4 times a day. When you wake up, you leave for work, when you come home from work, and when you go to sleep. 10 seconds of loving touch, and this is affectionate touch, not sexual touch, so there's no pressure to have it to lead to sex. It's totally fine to have sexual touch, but often what happens in struggling relationships is the man is desperate for sex, so all of his touch becomes about trying to get sex. That shuts her down because she doesn't feel safe yet.
He needs a better foreplay game.
Yeah, and this is one way to think of the foreplay game. Loving touch 4 times a day, 10 seconds each time, 40 seconds a day, you're sorted.
Get those reps in, Gino.
Jake, before we go to the short answers, Bruce was talking about the 3 stages. We had the romance stage, the power stage, and then the third one was the mature love. Before you eloquently shared your story, Jake, I just want Bruce to wrap up that third stage of mature love.
Okay. Let me just do the whole 3 stages in 30 seconds. So the romance stage, we fall in love, we come together, we're high on drugs. It's not actually love at all. It's completely just infatuation because we don't even know each other. We don't choose to love each other. We just can't help but love each other. So that's not love. That's infatuation. Then we are between 6 months and 2 years, the drugs wear off and we enter the power struggle stage where we separate from each other. We become more independent and we begin fighting for our independence again so that we don't lose ourselves in the relationship. And if we do this well, we should end up with our individual lives and our joint lives all intact. So we don't lose ourselves to the relationship. We don't lose the relationship to being independent. And then we enter the mature love stage, which is where you're able to flex and flow between being healthily dependent on each other and healthily independent from each other at the same time. And you're starting to operate as a team, doing things in synchrony, just like Jake is talking about, having those Sunday meetings. That's the mature love stage. What characterizes the power struggle stage is conflict. You don't feel safe. There's constant tension. There's anxiety at some level. You don't trust each other to depend on each other safely. And often people complain about feeling like they've lost themselves in the relationship or like nothing they ever do is good enough. This is where most people break up in the power struggle stage. And I would say a far smaller percentage of couples end up in the mature love stage because it's a lot harder to get to. But if you do, generally things get a lot easier in the mature love stage. And my recommendation is get to the mature love stage and then have kids. Ideally, in an ideal world, because then your kids get to get the best of you rather than trying to have kids when you still, as a couple, haven't even reached the mature love stage. You're fighting, you're in conflict. The kids just add to the stress of having to now parent at the same time, and your kids don't get the best of you. So that's the short story of, it doesn't ever work in that order, but in an ideal world, that's how I would do it.
Thank you.
Cool. All right, guys, let's take a quick time out to hear from our sponsor.
This episode of the Jake and Gino podcast is brought to you by Wheelbarrow Profits, the premier multifamily education community. Wheelbarrow Profits proof is in their results. Their members have closed over 86,000 units. That's over $5 billion in student deal volume. Are you serious about taking your real estate game to the next level? Do you have the confidence to take action? Schedule a call with the Wheelbarrow Profits team today and supercharge your real estate knowledge. Build lasting relationships through unparalleled networking opportunities. Obtain lasting knowledge on how to buy multifamily real estate with intensive training. Gain hands-on experience through their live events with like-minded individuals and industry professionals, all while experiencing the personal touch and family atmosphere that set them apart. Visit wheelbarrowprofits.com for more information.
All right, we are back. Gino said, he's listening to all these self-help books, and he's like, "Oh, vulnerability is the cool word now. We got to talk about vulnerability." And I'm like, "Yeah, this is total bullshit."
No, I said vulnerability is a cool word, Jake. That's how I said it.
It's such a, it's so weak, Gino. But whatever, we're gonna talk about it. No, I'm being a smartass. So, recently, I got like ran over by a Mack truck. My wife wanted this poodle, and we really rarely argue, right? And she just strong-armed me, put me in the ground, ran me over, put a cigarette out on my back, and then said, "What, biatch?" And it was tough. We got through it. The dog's coming this weekend, but I need some help.
Harsh words, bro. You got run over.
Dude. While I was run over, she sat the kids on me, and they're hitting me with Flintstones bats. Like I had zero way of coming out of this, and so it was just this is what it was gonna be. Bruce, what can I do?
What can you do about the dog, or what can you do about being run over by a Mack truck?
Any advice will be well received because it was an ass whooping and I took it. So I just want to know if you can help here.
Let's give Bruce some context. Jake's wife had a dog for years and years
20,
and years.
20, like 15, 20 years. I think it was 20.
18 years at least, if not longer. So there's a big attachment there. Jake did not love the dog as his wife loved the dog.
He was old and like decrepit and was in real bad shape. So I was asking for a break. I was like, give me a year, give me 6 months. Let's just chill.
The dog recently passed away,
yeah.
And I'm assuming that she wants to fill the void of having a dog with. She was around, I guess she was her 20s to
Whose side are you on?
late 30s. I'm painting the picture to have Bruce get all of the facts before he can actually give an
It's a
analysis.
fair point. It was a lopsided way coming out the gates, but
So, I think by the sounds of it, the way that went down was less than ideal, because ideally in a collaborative environment, you don't want Mack trucks in your house. You really want to be able to not have unilateral decision making going down, because unilateral decision making basically says, "Hey, it's my way or the highway," and the people.
I said that to her.
Mm-hmm.
I said, "This is what's happening. If you're going to just do this, it doesn't feel great on my end, right? Because you're just making decisions, and this is not like us coming together."
And I'm not
on
saying,
something.
she shouldn't have gotten the dog, but there probably was a way the two of you could have figured out how it would be a win-win. And
I was saying extend and pretend.
Okay. Her need for comfort and support, from which I imagine is what the dog provided, and your need for a break could both get met. Because other ways she could. So when I'm working with couples who need to make a decision and they both are completely different pages about the decision. Like, you don't want a dog. She absolutely does want a dog. Neither of you are going to budge. You're sitting with your arms crossed going, you will never find a solution if you stay.
That's not how I saw it from my perspective.
Say it again. That's not how you saw it.
That's not how I saw it from my perspective, but you're getting a one-sided, accusation.
Well, how
of
did
it right
you see
now.
it from your perspective?
Exactly how you described it.
Okay.
I'm just saying that it may not be the truth.
Okay. The way to get through that is to stop fighting about your positions and start discovering each other's values. So her value might have been emotional support or emotional comfort. Maybe that's what she was seeking to get from a dog. What you were trying to get from not having a dog was what, Jake?
A sane life without pissing shit on the floor
Peace.
and more responsibility. Yeah.
Peace. Okay.
And
so
I'll give you some more
peace.
context. She wasn't allowed to have a dog as a kid. So it was like this, she's 40. There's like 20 years in the making for this. So there's a lot of pent up dog.
Yeah, so for her value was autonomy. Like, I make my own decisions. I'm an adult now. I'm going to say how my life goes, and nobody's going to stop me. You will not be my father who wouldn't let me get a dog when I was a child. I will rebel. So she was coming.
So she was going Taylor Swift on the patriarchy then.
Yeah, or I mean, like, this is the same as people online leaving comments that go batshit crazy. It's like anyway. So you want to discover each other's values. She's obviously got something going on from her childhood, and she wants comfort and support. You obviously want peace. If I was working with you as clients, I'd say, what other ways are there for Jake to have peace and Jake's wife to have comfort and support? And, maybe on the weekends for the next 6 months until you buy a dog, you go to the dog park and you play with other people's dogs. I mean, there's like a billion other solutions when you try and meet those values, rather than when you get stuck on the fixed positions that we often get stuck on. Like, it's, nope, I'm having a dog now, or nothing. Or nope, we're not having a dog. When the minute you've kind of got these fixed positions, you're screwed. You're never going to get anywhere. You have to zoom out and look at the values that are informing those fixed positions, and then collaborate on getting those met.
Yeah,
That's
it was a fixed position, and I could not find a crack in the armor. Gino, if you don't mind, don't mention this in the show notes, because I don't need to be talking about this later. Kind of just let this one get buried here as we go. So last question for you, because you talked about, I think you moved to Turks and Caicos at one point, and then you basically hit rock bottom. And the last thing I'd want to hear from you is just sort of that, actual process more in depth of, you hit rock bottom, and then really, how did you find your way out of it? I know you mentioned like reading books and some things like that, but I have to believe there was more to it than that.
I mean, there was relationships where I practiced being a better version of me, a lot of self-reflection where I
What
was
about
like,
the victim mentality? What happened to the victim mentality there? Because it sounded like that was prominent.
I don't think it wasn't the victim mentality at all. At that point, I'd done so much personal development work. I was out of the victim.
You were able
mentality.
to identify yourself that you were the problem.
It was the opposite. It was like me going, I am the common denominator, not I'm a victim of. It's like, I'm actually responsible for all of my relationships going bad. And so it was a lot of learning, and then practicing and failing and learning tools and supporting friends and getting into relationships and figuring how to make it work. And 4 years later, I met my wife, and she was my biggest challenge and my greatest accomplishment is our marriage. The fact that we're still together now, 12 years later, is proof that these tools work and I've grown. And I think we all have to grow. And at that point, I was a lot less mature than I am now. And it was a process of time and self-reflection and growth. It wasn't really a magic pill like I did some seminar or course or something. It was just practice and being willing to own my stuff and go, yep, it's me. Yep, it's me. Yep, it's me. And not blame my partner when it was very easy to blame my partner.
Gino, what was the term that your hot button term right now that they're all using in business development? What was it?
The hot button term.
I mentioned I was picking on you before.
I don't remember.
Vulnerable.
Oh, right? Vulnerability. Yes.
Gino loves this one. So Gino, so you recently, you're coming into the hot room right now, the hot seat. So Gino's, I don't even know. I've known you for what, 15 years? Is that correct? Maybe more?
Close to 20. Yeah.
Close to 20. Never in my time knowing you, have you had, maybe back in New York, but have not had animals. And apparently you just got steamrolled into like some goats or something.
No, I got some mini donkeys.
Mini donkeys.
Yes,
okay, so they're pooping and peeing all over the place and stinking it up. How'd that go for you?
It wasn't a challenge. What it is, I've got older children. The children are getting older, and I never wanted a dog because I don't want to walk a dog every day. I didn't want to fall in love with the dog, and then dog dies, and dad's got. I didn't want.
Oh, unpack that one, Bruce. He's got some sort of connection issue there.
No, but so I've got chickens now. I've got the farm, and we're starting out with the mini donkeys. Hopefully, that works really well. I'd like to get a cow, maybe to do some milking. So I just
any takebacks on the donkeys, or are you getting locked in there?
No, what'd you say? I'm sorry.
Any takebacks? Can you get out of this at this point? Or are you still
no?
stuck?
Actually, they're really cool. I really. I mean, they're awesome. I mean, it's just amazing. But when you talk,
he's older and wiser. See, I was like calmly answering. No, of course my wife was right. This is so good, man. She's just brilliant. And I was like, yeah, bring on some donkeys to my house. It's gonna be great.
But it's my other house. It would not be my main house, like where I live, but it's my farm. But as you get older, you get more mature and you want to feel the needs of I have 6 children. So the kids love it. And it's part of the extension of the family. And we made a decision as a family. I can afford them now. It's the other thing.
What are their names?
It's Lucy and Buttercup. So they're really
that's cute, man. That's cute as hell. That's awesome.
Can we get back to some seriousness here? I want to ask Bruce
one thing I want to say about vulnerability, because this hot button word vulnerability, you're right, Jake. It is like everywhere. And I think it was popularized by, what's her name, who wrote the book about vulnerability, The Power of Brene Brown. But I've got a reframe for you on vulnerability. Here's how I think of vulnerability. Emotional honesty. That's all it is. It's being honest about your emotions. And if you're not vulnerable, then you're being dishonest, as far as I'm concerned. Anything other than vulnerability is dishonest. So when somebody says, hey, how you doing? And you're like, I'm fine. And you're not, you're lying. Okay.
I do that shit all the time.
Hey, I'm struggling. I had a rough morning. I'm not feeling so good.
No time for that crap. Let's get out of the weeds. And I'm trying to be a tough guy. I'm trying to be a tough guy right now too. In all honesty, and be funny. But
I know. I can tell you're doing a great job.
If you come to me and say like, "How's it going?" I'm like 99.9% of the time, "Hey, I'm doing great, man. What's up?" I don't want to talk about that shit. There's better things to do.
No, I get it.
That's why I got his ass steamrolled.
You got the next question will be the next thing I'll say, dude, get a life. You're freaking me out. What are you doing?
Yeah. I'm like, stop being such a pussy, man.
Seriously. If we're going there, that's probably come out a few times, right, Gino? So.
Yeah, hold on a second. But Bruce, my last question, because this is important for me at least. How did you build a business out of something that you truly love? Because most people try to build something out of their passion and it doesn't work. But this is something that actually impacted your life. It revolutionized your life. And I think through the process you saw, and most of us see or have the need to be more compassionate to ourselves. That's what it really comes down to. We beat ourselves up. We're not compassionate towards ourselves. We can't love others because we don't really love ourselves. That was what going on early in your life. You realized that, you saw that, and you said, hey, let me start to build a business. How was it that you started a business with this, and how have you been able to be successful in this business and been able to scale this business through the past 15 years?
Probably a similar story to you guys. A lot of luck and a lot of failed businesses prior. I built 4 or 5 online businesses prior to Love at First Fight. What I'm really good at, my gift, is teaching. That's my passion. Doesn't matter what I'm teaching about. I just happen to fall in love with the idea of helping couples. And I fell in love with the information I was learning about relationships because it made such a big impact on me. I was naturally sharing it with all my best friends without even trying. And I'm like, but like, I'm teaching this anyway. I'm a teacher. And I stopped teaching what I was teaching before, which was entrepreneurship. And I was like, you know what? I'm tired of trying to help people make more money so they can buy another car. It felt meaningless to me. I want to make a difference. I want to wake up in the morning and feel like I'm actually doing something important. This is important to me. And so I just took all of the skills I already had about building online businesses, the skills, my entrepreneurship skills, my teaching skills, and I took the information, flew around the world for 4 years first, getting trained to work with couples, studying with the top relationship researchers. And then I was like, how can I make this information accessible? Because it's all just scientific jargon. And that's my gift is teaching and making things simple and easy, like Gary Chapman. And so like, this is probably my 10th entrepreneurial venture in my life. This was the one that struck gold and worked. So yeah, a lot of luck.
All right, Gino, take us home.
Well, Bruce, where can the listeners get a hold of you before I wrap up the show? Where can they find more about you?
So you can learn more about my work at loveitfirstfight.com. That's fight with an F. And there's a free relationship repair course there. If any of you are struggling in your relationships and you've enjoyed this conversation, go check out my video course. It's for free. It's a 5-day video course. You get a little video every day that'll give you techniques and tools that you can apply straight away in your relationship to start improving things.
Jake, young Bruce Muzik in 2006 is devastated. Gets divorced. He picks up the phone. He calls his buddy, Eric Edmeades. He goes, bro, I got to get out of this London place. I can't take London anymore. Eric's like, you know what? Come on down. I got a couch. You can hang out for here for a little while. And he sits there and he realizes after all of his failed relationships over this past few years, he's like, the common denominator is me. It's no one else. I have to accept responsibility. How do I figure this thing out? And through years and years of struggle, starting new ventures and through his own, admission, he's a great teacher. He doesn't care about, other people making money. He wants to impact people and their lives and their relationships. And unfortunately, all these skills that we talk about, making money, starting a family, relationships, it is nowhere to be found. So if you're listening to this and you're saying to yourself, yeah, I want to have a deeper relationship with my spouse. That's what life is all about. I'm here making tens of millions of dollars, but that doesn't matter at the end. What really matters at the end is the relationships that I've had in life. And if you really want to deepen your relationship with your spouse, go out and check Bruce Muzik. And I know Jake, after the show, is going to get a journal. And he's going to go plop it on the toilet. And he's going to start writing little love things to his wife.
I really enjoyed the podcast, Gino, but that one threw me for a little bit of a loop. And I'm like, maybe I'm a little bit of like, that's a little too gross, but I'll find a spot, right, that we can squat in and do it in a little bit, more of like a romantic setting, maybe, So just being a smart ass. Guys, this is great. As always, we believe in buying deals for the long term. Think in decades. I'm Jake. He is the G Daddy, and we make it happen. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, Bruce.